I wanted to talk a little bit more about this cultivation of joy. And, Buddhism and Buddhist practice, there's this talk, the Four Noble Truths, there's this talk of, we are turning towards suffering. We are acknowledging the truth of the pain and dukkha of our moment-to-moment existence. But what I think sometimes there is a misunderstanding perhaps about that this is a path of freedom and joy. Isn't that? Just let that sink in when I say it. This is a path of freedom and joy. And sometimes that can be missed. How many of you have had an experience, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how this can be. It's one of the joy is considered one of the awakening factors. It's really placed foundational, central, the Buddhist path to awakening. How many of you have had an experience of seeing like a Buddhist leader or monk and just seeing how they light up the room? Has anyone had an experience of this? I don't know if anyone's experienced the Dalai Lama. Has anyone in person? Anyone here? I have. And I've never seen such joy. So, do you know what I mean? So can you energetically feel what I'm talking about? It's good to feel it. Feel it in your cells, this truth, this joy, this freedom. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's an amazing teacher, monastic in the Theravadan tradition, scholar, every time he loves this topic, and every time I see him, it's just, you should see the way he is lit up from the inside. And the other thing to note is that, the Dalai Lama and other amazing spiritual leaders that we can look to for inspiration on this, is that often this joy can be really deepened and expanded at the hardest times. If you know the story of the Dalai Lama and others, incredible hardship and loss and injustice, right? But he's free. So this is kind of what I just think is so important for us to not forget. So I'll say a few words about this, and then I want to let us share and ask questions and move into this together. And this comes directly from the Buddha, but also this class that James Barantz created. And what we're cultivating when we're cultivating joy, and that word, sometimes that word just feels a little bit too unrealistic at times, right, everybody? So it's okay if you want to replace that word with something like peace or contentment or ease, or, you know what I mean? It can be whatever feels wholesome for you. And when you allow it, in my experience, when I allow it to be kind of a very low bar in terms of wholesome, the joy then kind of grows naturally. And before you know it, I'm like, oh, wait, this really is an experience of joy. But I'm not looking for it. I'm not trying to make it happen, right? We're really knowing what's already here. So what we're doing in our practice, and joy can only be known and accessed and cultivated in the present moment, right? Now. It's not an abstraction. Otherwise it becomes a striving, right? We're not landing into what is already here and discovering this truth, remembering, discovering, returning. We're inclining the heart-mind into the present moment in such a way where we're able to notice our treasures, we're conscious of our treasures when they are present, we're receptive, we're open, we're available for the goodness that's here and present within us and around us. But also it really is developing and cultivating the heart-mind states that are always available in any moment. That, this is radical, think about it. We're cultivating mind and heart states in the present moment that are not dependent on external conditions. And part of you may go, I don't know about that. And that's okay. That's okay. But that this is the power and the freedom that we're tapping into. So you might say that cultivating joy is kind of an inside job, right? It's a little bit of an inside job. We're starting to tap into and notice these more wholesome states. You know, the Buddha said, with our thoughts we make the world. Has anyone heard that? Also, it said everything comes from the mind. And when we say the mind, we're talking about mind-heart from a Buddhist perspective, just to be clear about that. This is not from the neck up. This is like wholehearted practice in the present moment. But this is kind of a very powerful thing, that it's all, we're making it, we're creating our experience in any moment, depending on the attitude or the state of our mind heart. That will determine in any moment whether we suffer or whether we become more free. And this is what we're learning to tune into. How many of you, it's almost as if, I like to think of it, I like this image of it being like really noticing that the mind-heart state and actively cultivating it in this way is like a satellite dish with these coordinates that we drop into. Does this make sense, everybody? And then what happens is, what you think you become, where you're aligned, where those coordinates are what unfolds. How many of you know the experience? Who's heard of the confirmation bias? This is this very powerful aspect that wherever the mind, wherever that satellite dish, or whatever those coordinates might be of whether you're aware of it or not, that's what you're going to see, and that's what you're going to notice, and that's what you're going to feel, and that's what you're going to become. You know, as we think, so we become, the Buddha said. This is pretty wild, right? It's powerful stuff. But isn't it joyful to know that it's within our control if we can stop and begin to cultivate this, right? So with the confirmation bias, you know, you might wake up one morning and of course, you know, oh, it's not a good day, right? How many of you woken up with that? Oh, it's not a good day today. And then if you don't really mindfully tap into that and kind of mindfully go, okay, and cultivate a more wholesome attitude mind, that will be your experience. It's all you'll notice, it's all you'll see. So in the Awakening Joy course, what we're doing is we're actively kind of honing into these coordinates. And you know what, before you know it, you're just noticing all this, you know, that's where you're inclining. That's where you're opening to. And more that becomes the flow of your experience. It's not that you're pushing away or not noticing the hard stuff. It's not that. It's more that the wholesome qualities of heart-mind can be with it, can relate to the truth of our life in a very different, transformative way. Once again, it's not what's happening. It's how we are with it, how we relate to it. This is, often we think it's out there, don't we? We do. And you know, life is painful. I don't want to discount any of that. But from the Buddhist perspective, our suffering, what we're looking at, that we're looking at what is causing our suffering and how are we liberating from that, from the inside out, from the inside out. And I'll just say this, and then I wanna share a little story, and then I wanna let you kind of share in groups, and then we'll open up to questions. But I do wanna say that one of the main ingredients for cultivating this more wholesome heart mind, as many of you know, is this ingredient, this mind state of mindfulness, to cultivate mindfulness. And mindfulness is this non-interfering, non-reactive, balanced state of accepting awareness, right, with whatever's there. And there's something about that that allows us that then when we bring mindfulness to whatever the situation may be, even mindfulness to an unwholesome mind state, mind-heart state, we can start to then know it, and without a lot of reactivity or striving or aversion, we can, with love and with kindness and with wisdom, we can start to shift that satellite dish in the present moment. And if you feel it, you feel the difference. You can really feel that difference, right? So mindfulness, how many, and the Buddha would often, we talked about the hindrances, the obscured mind. From a more modern neurological perspective, I guess you could say, how many of you heard of negativity bias? How many of you heard of that? Yeah, we know it well, don't we? This is this mind's tendency, our tendency, we're all kind of hardwired, it's been handed down through generations. It's kept us alive, it's a good thing, it's kept us on our toes. But remember, the negativity bias is focusing on what's wrong in the present moment, what's been wrong in the past, and what could be wrong in the future, right? That's what it's doing all the time. And it's doing that to keep us on our toes, to keep us alive. It's hardwired from generations. But if it takes over, it has nothing to do with the present moment. Absolutely nothing. When it takes over, it's a lot of suffering, right, everybody? And it is our natural tendency to be that's where the mind goes naturally. Wouldn't you agree? That's where it goes naturally. So practice, and the Buddha knew this. The Buddha called it the hindrances. The Buddha knew it. And now we can see, and the Buddha knew this without any, EKG or what have you, electrodes on the brain. He could see that mindfulness is one of the only things that deactivates the negativity bias. It's almost like it breaks its spell. Do you guys know the feeling when that happens? You just kind of go, ooh, wait, ooh, what just happened? And you drop into some reality. You drop into a felt sense. And when you deactivate the negativity bias through mindfulness in the present moment, what unfolds? Well, first of all, my experience, it's a joy. Reality flows in. I don't have to do it. The present moment just shows itself to me. I get to discover the truth. I don't have to look for it. It just flows in, and this is really an amazing experience. But also, when it gets deactivated, there is an experience and the truth that it's not all bad all the time. Do you know what I mean, everybody? It's not all bad in any moment. There's also this good heart that's just waiting to be freed in this moment. Isn't that great? This heart is waiting right now to be free, and it's possible. So in every moment it's different. It's such a creative process moment to moment, isn't it? Especially now in these uncertain times. And I'll just end with this, and then I'm going to tell you a little story. And it may seem, and there may be a part of you that when I say this is a deep time to awaken this kind of joy and liberation that I'm referring to, that the Buddha is all about, of course, part of you may say, oh, come on, that's unrealistic and silly. Like, that's not really dealing with reality or something, right? Does anyone of you feel that way? It's like, this is like, yeah, it's serious times. But what I want to say is that this cultivation of joy or freedom or whatever, however you would like, these more wholesome mind states, mind-heart states, I've noticed even in these last few weeks is that as I've continued to really keep that satellite dish wholesome, I'm more clear. I'm more able to see things as they are. I'm more able to navigate it without reactivity. And I would say that the suffering just creates more suffering, as many of you know. And there's something joyful about not adding to the suffering in this world right now, and being of service and being able to be balanced and to move into a position to be of service and to, you know? So this is really why it's, I think, so important. So I want to just share a story, and then I want to make time for us to kind of share in small groups. And you know, this is called Trudy and Friends, this sit. You know, Trudy Goodman used to lead the sit for years. And so I just wanted to share a story from Trudy because it's a really cool story. And it is kind of about this radical invitation of cultivating joy and really living. And what is that really like for all of us? So Trudy tells this wonderful story that I love. She, before she came to California, she was a deep Zen practitioner, and she called her heart teacher, Maureen, one of the first Zen women roshis in the United States. And Trudy was really very devoted to this teacher. And Maureen, at one point, was diagnosed with cancer. And she was dying. She was actively dying. And Trudy was in a very fortunate position of being in her home with her and taking care of her during these last weeks, what have you. And so Trudy knew that Maureen's time was ending, that it was going to be her last days, and took Trudy some courage. And she, you know, 'cause she said Maureen was very, kind of very, very strong presence, really a little bit intimidating, you know, very strong woman. And not touchy-feely, right? And so Trudy gathered up her courage to ask her this one question that she wanted to ask her. And she said to Maureen, she said, listen, if you could give me your deepest teaching at this time, what would it be, you know? I want to know. And Maureen, she said, without skipping a beat, said, live it up. Everyone's nodding in the room. I get chills. Live it up. What? What does that mean in your life in a wholesome way? Live it up. Live it up. What's that mean for you? So that's my prompt to put you in